Well, I'm back in my workshop again today. If you recall, last time I got the staging yard done. So that was step one of the project. Step two is to continue the bench work. I have another fairly large section that's going to go in here. That one's fairly straightforward, but after that I have a few complicated ones to build. So the task for the day is to get this next section built and installed. I need to rip some more wood, so I'm going to get on the table saw quickly and I will be right back. Well, this is what the benchwork currently looks like. Just as I was thinking that I was making good progress, I realized that I goofed up yesterday. I was sick, I wasn't feeling too good, and I brain farted. I was thinking that this corner section here didn't need a lower frame, but it does. So all these legs in this corner are tall legs, they need to be short legs, and I need to build another frame almost identical to this one and mount it 14 inches lower down. Sorry, 11 inches lower down. I'm in the process of making the extra legs, and then I'm just going to frame that piece up and basically just replace these legs one at a time so I can do so without collapsing the layout. Well, I have now added all the missing framing. It didn't take very long. It was a little annoying to have to undo legs that I'd already assembled and redo them, but that's only a few minutes. This is the way it should have been done the first time. Now I've got all the framing I need to hold up the low level turn back curve. So I'm going to get that in next. Well, I spent this morning getting the rising grade from the staging yard. The straight bit was fairly straightforward. And then it gets a little bit more complicated on the curve. I've made myself a little tool. This piece of wood here with the ears on it at the end. I just place a level on it. I spent some time calculating what it needed to be, and I did this straight piece based on the calculations. And this is double-sided. I don't know exactly what that step is. It was as much as it needed to be for my level to put the bubble in the center. And it's important I get the level the same way round because it's not quite accurate. So as long as it's the same way around every time, it still works. And then the other side is a 1/16 of an inch less for the curves, because this is quite a steep grade, so I compensated it for the curvature. All I have to do now before I can call this grade finished is to get some sides in so the trains don't fall off there. And the clearance under these last ribs here is about 3 3/8 inches, so the 1/4 inch road bed and the track, I'll have about 3 inches, which is plenty. I was thinking I might have to shave it a little bit, but I don't. Well, time has caught up with me today. This is all I have time for. But I got this last corner in. It took me 2 attempts to get it right. Originally I ended up 3/4 of an inch too narrow because I had subtracted 1 too many plywood thicknesses from this piece here. So I just cut the end piece off and added a new one. So now it is exactly the right width. Well, actually it's 1/2 an inch narrower than the room size, just to give me some tolerance. Tomorrow I'll get the curved ends in the 2 aisles, both here by the post and over there. And then it'll be time for the only rectangular section on the entire layout, which is the one that goes from that end to where that wood is leaning against the wall. That'll be the only. When it comes to laying out the yard, at the back of the layout, I have a continuous row of turnouts, almost the whole length of it. So I have to carefully consider where I can put benchwork joints. So rather than trust the small scale drawing that I've been given, I'm going to lay out the yard ladders full size on my desk so that I can measure it. And then I can figure out exactly how to build the benchwork to avoid problems later. So I have this big box of turnouts. I'm going to dig out the ones I need and start laying those areas out. Well, here is the east end yard ladder laid out. I've got the first turnout from the main line to the double slip. 3 more yard tracks in there, and then the runaround track. And then there's 2 spurs in here. These are all number 8 Walters turnouts. And I need to get a measurement on this yard ladder. If we look here on the plan, we can see the ladder's basically touching the middle because there's virtually no length here at all. But what I'm going to do is put a short length of track there so that I can get the switch machine far enough back from the joint. The other thing I might do is put it here. In fact, I think that's a better idea. I'm going to put the benchwork joint at this point here, and there is already 1 section joint between this first turnout and the double slip. So I'm going to measure that and then build up the other yard ladder as well. Well, here is the west yard ladder set up according to the plan. Now there's no double slip at this end, but I've used it as a placeholder to get the first and second tracks the right distance apart so they can be parallel as they are on the plan. And then I have 3 more body tracks there, and then that run round. If we look on the plan, we can see that I measured that at 62 inches to this point, and I think the next benchwork joint needs to be here, because to go from here all the way to there is going to be too long. It's going to be somewhere in the region of 10 feet, and I don't know that I can successfully get that into the room. Also, I don't want to have a benchwork joint right at the toe of the turnout where it's going to get in the way of the switch machine, and if I go any further it's going to be on a curve, and I want to avoid the curve areas. So that looks like the best place for the next joint. Let me measure that. Well, it's the morning of Monday, September 3rd. I don't recall when I last made a video. I know I wasn't out here at all yesterday, but on Saturday I got the benchwork down most of this side. Today my goal is to get the last section in here to turn the corner, and then to go back and get the rest of the incline put in. And then if I have time, I would like to get the curved sections in around the ends of the 2 aisles, one here and one over there. And if I get that far today, I think that'll be a good day's progress. Anyway, I have my supervisor with me today. Hi Duke. Hey buddy. So let me get busy. Well, I didn't get quite as far as I wanted to yesterday. We see this corner module is in, and I got the incline from the staging yard along the straightaway. Anyway, this is the last of the double deck sections. So I've got this full end plate, and from here around the rest of the room, around where the table saw is, and to that section in front of the fan at the other end of the room, all that is narrow single deck benchwork. So that should go a lot quicker. Anyway, I used up most of my plywood offcuts on the incline yesterday, so I might wait on the corner sections until I have some more offcuts, because I'm not going to cut whole 8x4 sheets just for little pieces when I'm going to have so much left over. from the main top. So for the day's project, I think I'm going to work on the upper level bench work over the staging yard, because I can finish that without it taking up any more floor space in my workshop. Once I continue filling in the rest of the layout, I'm going to be using up all the area where I'm standing now, and the space in front of my bench is going to be kind of narrow. Getting this cantilever the right shape is a little bit awkward, because I have to get the top cut to size, and I've got it tacked in place temporarily with just a few screws. This front member is just clamped where it needs to go, and as you can see, I've drawn lines underneath. And now what I can do is take the plywood away, turn it over and measure what I've got, and then that will give me the length of that beam in there. And once I've got that accurately positioned, I can reassemble everything and it should hold its shape. So let me take the top off, get that cut, and then come back and give it a test fit. Well, I have put both my outriggers on. This one I have not yet attached at the outer end. That way I can adjust this just by moving that one way or the other. The other end is firmly screwed and glued in place because that's where all the load is. And even though I have thinned these beams down, notice the full width heel there. That is very important structurally, because that corner there is in compression. If I'd used a narrow piece all the way across, I would have a lot less strength than I have now. So it's time to temporarily install the top once more, so that I can get that front adjusted before that glue sets up at the back. Well, with the framing up to this point, the front piece and the two outriggers, this corner here is still a little bit loose. I can push it down maybe 1/8 of an inch if I want to. But then the curved piece that runs all the way along the front, as I've done on the lower deck, is actually a structural member. So that should make it rock solid, especially once it's screwed into the edge of the plywood. So well, with this framing over here done, the peninsula is now fully framed. I've got the tops for both sides cut, not installed yet, because I want to get the wires in before I install them permanently. I don't have the wires here yet. This bottom level of framing down here is necessary to hold the fascia. That was missing until a few minutes ago. So I'm going to go on to a different part of the structure. And since I now have some offcuts of plywood, I might even get on with the curves at the end of the aisles. I know I've been saying it for several days, but now I feel ready to do it. Well, after waiting until I had some offcuts of 1/2 inch plywood to make the corners with, I had a change of plan and I decided to do it out of 3/4. The reason for that is that it saves the need to put a strip of the bendy board up around the edge, which is just one extra step that I don't need, and it meant that it didn't plane out properly. I would have to have cut it back 3/8 of an inch, and there's a chance of messing it up, so I've just done it the old-fashioned way now. These three here have an extra 3 inches on the one end, because if we look over in this far corner, we can see that the low level track cuts the corner somewhat, and if I put the curve where I wanted it to, it would overhang the edge, so I had to bring it forward 3 inches. Well, as you can see, the benchwork now goes all the way around the room, except for the hinging gate across the doorway. For some reason, these two sections don't quite line up. I think I'm out by the thickness of a piece of plywood somewhere, but until I find the error, I can't continue. The problem I was having is that not only is there no square corner that I can pull dimensions from, but the drawing I was given is missing most of the critical dimensions. It has the wall thickness labelled in 11 different places, even though it's totally irrelevant, but many of the critical dimensions, such as this alcove here by the door, were completely omitted from the drawing, leaving me to have to measure the small scale drawing that I was given. So I'm going to go away and figure out where this error is and get right back and fix it. Well, Friday afternoon has come to an end. I got the framing almost done. All except for this corner over here. This is a little awkward. I'm not quite sure how big it's got to be. And also I ran out of wood as well. I need to go to the store and get some more. And then there is the high level logging line which will sit on top of the peninsula. That will be framed as a separate section as well. So those two areas are all that remains to be done for framing. This corner is finished. I've got the curves in, although they're still clamping up. And the swing gate is finished. At the moment there is nothing holding these two sections the right distance apart, because both of these need to be firmly anchored against the walls of the room, and I don't have that luxury right now. This block is a temporary measure just to stop it sagging, because until the bottom of this leg is anchored against the wall, it wants to try to push it outwards. Well, this is what the railroad looks like after most of the bench work is done. Well, the framing is complete, but I haven't put the tops on yet. These two sections here I needed to cut and put them into place temporarily to be able to frame the wings. The only section of top that is permanently installed is this semicircle here above that quadrant where the valley goes, where those boxes screws are, because that was an integral part of the structure. I'm going to remove those temporarily installed pieces because I want to get all the bus wiring in before I put the tops in. It'll be a lot easier to work from the top than it will underneath. this video is already getting rather long, so I'm going to break it here. Next week I will continue with the project and get the benchwork to the state that you can see now. So be sure to check in then. Thanks for watching and bye for now.